My blind date walked into the quietest restaurant in Richmond, with a little girl in patent leather shoes, a pink cardigan, and the expression of someone being marched into a tax audit. The hostess froze. 3 nearby tables turned. And Leah Morgan, the woman I had been set up with by a mutual friend who swore we were both normal but in interesting ways, leaned close to me and whispered, "I'm sorry. I couldn't leave her alone." That was the moment the whole evening could have gone wrong. I'm Evan Reed, 34, and I tune pianos for a living. Mostly old ones in churches, theaters, schools, and houses where somebody's grandmother still believes the instrument is only a little out of shape. My job has taught me 2 things. Listen before you touch anything and never pretend something isn't strained when every note is telling you it is. That restaurant was strained. White tablecloths, candles, silverware lined up like surgical tools. A waiter who spoke in a voice so soft it made normal breathing feel rude. Leah looked beautiful in a dark green dress, hair pinned up with one curl already escaping near her cheek. But she also looked like she'd been bracing herself since the parking lot. Her smile was steady. Her eyes weren't. Beside her, the little girl stared at the folded napkin on her plate. "Is this a hat?" she asked. Leah closed her eyes for half a second. "Maisie." "What? It looks like a bishop hat." I liked her immediately, not in the polite, isn't she cute way adults use when they don't know what to do with a child. I liked the fact that she had assessed the room, found the one ridiculous object, and reported her findings. "I think it's supposed to be a swan," I said. Maisie tilted her head. "That swan has made poor choices." Leah's mouth twitched. That was the first real crack in her embarrassment, and it hit me harder than it should have. She had a dry kind of humor, the kind that did not beg for approval. It just appeared, sharp and quiet, if you were paying attention. "I'm so sorry," she said again, softer. "My sitter texted while I was halfway here. Fever. My sister's at work until 9. I tried to call you, but I think you were already inside." "My phone has terrible manners," I said. "It goes silent in fancy places." That earned me another almost smile. The waiter brought menus the size of roofing shingles. Maisie opened hers, stared at it, and whispered, "Mom, what's a reduction?" "A sauce," Leah said. "Why is it reduced? Was it in trouble?" I looked down to hide my laugh. Leah did not touch the sparkling water the waiter poured for her. She kept rubbing the back of one heel against the leg of her chair, and when she reached into her tote for Maisie's crayons, I saw a pair of folded flats tucked inside like an escape plan. The room kept pretending not to watch us. Maisie picked up a fork with 3 long tines and one smaller one. "Why is this one weird?" "For salad," Leah said. "I don't trust a fork that specializes." Something in Leah's shoulders tightened. Not anger, defeat. Like she was preparing to apologize her way through an evening nobody would enjoy. And I knew, right then, that if I stayed in that chair just to prove I was flexible, I would be making her carry the weight of my politeness. So, I closed my menu. "Leah," I said, "how do you feel about tacos?" She blinked. "Tacos? There's a food truck court by the river. Picnic tables, string lights, a carousel if it's still running. Nobody there owns a salad fork with a resume." Maisie slowly turned toward me. "There's a carousel?" 2 blocks over. Leah studied me, careful now. "You don't have to do that." "I know. I mean, I can make this work." "I believe you." I glanced around the room, but I'm not sure this room deserves the effort. For the first time all night, Leah laughed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to change the temperature at our table. The waiter arrived with the posture of a man prepared to describe soup. I said, "I'm sorry, but we're going to release this reservation back into the wild." His eyes flicked to Maisie, then back to me. "Of course, sir." Outside, the warm evening air felt like somebody had loosened a tie around my neck, and I wasn't even wearing one. Maisie skipped ahead on the sidewalk, holding Leah's hand, her cardigan bouncing behind her. Leah looked over at me. "You're either very kind," she said, "or very hungry for tacos. Both can be true. Dangerous combination. Only around salsa." At the Riverside Court, we ordered from a truck painted bright orange. Maisie got chicken tacos with nothing green, then added 3 lime wedges because she liked control. Leah ordered fish tacos, and finally changed into the flats from her tote while standing behind a maple tree with the dignity of a woman refusing to be defeated by footwear. I saw nothing, I said when she came back. You saw everything. I'm a professional listener. Vision is not my department. She smiled at me then, really smiled, and I felt it in my chest like the first clean note after a long adjustment. We ate at a picnic table under string lights while the river moved dark and silver beside us. Maisie told me her carousel strategy involved choosing the horse with the least haunted eyes. Leah told me she worked as a graphic designer for small businesses, which meant she spent most days explaining that making a logo bigger did not make a company more trustworthy. That's exactly how piano owners talk, I said. They think louder means fixed. Maybe we're both in the business of gently disappointing people. Speak for yourself. I disappoint with confidence. She laughed again, and this time, she didn't look away. When the carousel music started, Maisie grabbed my sleeve. You have to help us pick. Mom always chooses emotionally. Leah sighed. I chose one horse named Buttercup one time. Buttercup looked like she had secrets. We rode the carousel, Maisie in front on a black horse with gold paint, Leah beside her, one hand on the pole, the other catching her dress at her knee. I stood on the platform behind them, steadying myself as the lights blurred around us. At one point, Leah looked back at me over her shoulder. There was no apology in her face anymore, just curiosity. That was worse, better, more dangerous. At 9:15, a silver hatchback pulled up by the curb, and a woman in scrubs jumped out before the engine fully settled. Taryn? Leah said, relief softening her voice. I know, I'm late. Taryn kissed Maisie's forehead while reaching for her backpack. Emergency double ear infection in exam room 3. Glamorous life. Maisie pointed at me. This is Evan. He knows about haunted horses. Taryn gave me a quick once-over. Useful skill. I put it on my business cards, I said. Leah knelt to hug Maisie. I'll be home soon. Maisie whispered something in her ear. Leah's cheeks colored. What? I asked after Taryn drove off, with Maisie waving dramatically through the back window. Leah stood under the string lights, her flats in one hand, heels in the other, green dress moving slightly in the river breeze. She said not to pick a boring horse next time. I support that. Leah looked toward the parking lot, then back at me. For one second, I thought she was going to thank me and leave. It would have been reasonable, responsible, clean. Instead, she lifted one eyebrow. So, she said, are you willing to continue this date with only me? I looked at Leah standing there with her heels dangling from 2 fingers, and for once in my life, I did not try to make the answer sound clever. Yes, I said. Very much. Good. She slipped the shoes into her tote. Because there's a pie counter 3 blocks from here that serves coffee strong enough to make you reconsider your childhood. That sounds medically unsafe. It builds character. The place was narrow, bright, and old-fashioned without trying too hard. Red stools, chrome edges. A woman behind the counter who called everyone a Han with the authority of a judge. Leah ordered cherry pie. I got banana cream. She watched me take the first bite. That is a bold choice for a grown man. I tune pianos in church basements. I have nothing left to prove. Her laugh came easier now, without the restaurant watching her, without Maisie needing translation from the land of adult expectations. Leah became sharper, warmer, more herself. She asked about my work, and not in the usual way. Most people say, piano tuner, is that still a job? As if I might dissolve if they stop believing in me. Leah said, do you hear the wrongness all at once? Or do you have to search for it? That question made me put my fork down. Both, I said. Sometimes a bad note jumps out. Sometimes it's more like the whole instrument is leaning in one direction, and you have to figure out where the pressure started. She rested her chin on her hand. That sounds like design. How? A client says the color is wrong, but the color is fine. It's the spacing, or the typeface, or the fact that they asked for elegance and sent me a photo of a pirate ship. I nearly choked on my coffee. She smiled. Small business owners are brave people with chaotic Pinterest boards. By midnight, our plates were empty and neither of us had moved. Then Leah's expression shifted just slightly, more deliberate. "I should say something," she said. "Okay. I had a wonderful time tonight. Unexpectedly. But if we do this again, I'd like the next few dates to be adult only." I nodded before she finished. "Of course. I don't mean Maisie as a problem. I didn't think you did. She's my daughter. She's central to my life. But she's not a shortcut to intimacy, and she's not a test you need to pass while I grade you across the table." There it was again, that directness. No performance, no apology dressed up as a joke. "I'd like to know you," she said. "Not just how you handle surprise childcare disasters." My chest did something inconvenient. "I'd like that too." She studied me. "Good, then ask me." "Ask you? For the second date, Evan." I grinned. "Leah Morgan, would you like to go on a second date with me? No children, no swan napkins, and no forks with specialties?" "Yes," she said, "but I reserve the right to judge your dessert choices." "That seems fair." Our second date was not dinner. It was a theater. The old Marigold on Alder Street had been closed for 20 years before the Neighborhood Historical Society raised enough money to restore it. I had been hired to tune the upright piano in the rehearsal room and the old grand on stage before their reopening week. When Leah asked what my Thursday looked like, I made the mistake of telling her. "That sounds better than sitting across from each other making resume conversation," she said. "Can I watch?" "You want to watch me tune a piano?" "I want to watch you do something you care about." That sentence followed me around for 2 days. She arrived at the Marigold in jeans, a black sweater, and red lipstick that made me forget several basic words. The theater smelled like dust, varnish, and old velvet. Sunlight came through high windows in pale strips, catching the gold trim newly painted around the boxes. Arthur Bell, the Historical Society director, met us in the aisle with a clipboard pressed to his chest. "Mr. Reed, the donor's preview is Friday at 6. The board walkthrough is Thursday at 4. The photographer arrives at 5:30. Please tell me the Grand will not embarrass us." "The Grand has survived vaudeville, 2 floods, and a raccoon in the orchestra pit," I said. "I think it can survive donors." Arthur blinked, then wrote something down. "Excellent. Miss Morgan, welcome. Please avoid the balcony railings. They are original, which is a polite word for temperamental." Leah leaned toward me as he walked away. "I like him. He schedules anxiety for other people. A valuable civic service." She sat in the front row while I worked on the Grand. At first I was too aware of her watching, the turn of her ankle, the way she tucked one leg under the other, the quiet focus of her face. Then the piano took over. That always happens. The world narrows to wire and wood, felt and tension. You make a small change, listen, make another. You don't force it. You persuade the instrument back toward itself. When I finally looked up, Leah wasn't smiling exactly. She looked moved. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing." That was not a nothing face. "It's just—" She stood and walked onto the stage. "You're very gentle with something that could make a lot of noise." I didn't know what to do with that, so I tested middle C again. She laughed softly. Deflection noted. After I finished, I played a few bars to check the tone. Nothing impressive. An old waltz my mother used to hum while washing dishes. Leah stepped closer. "Do you dance, piano man?" "Only under legal pressure." She held out her hand. "Consider yourself subpoenaed." So we danced on the empty stage, under work lights and scaffolding, with the ghost of my clumsy waltz still hanging in the air. She was close enough that I could see a tiny freckle near her left ear. Close enough that the easy joke in me went quiet. Her hand rested against my shoulder. Mine found her waist. For 3 turns, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up at me, and I knew I could kiss her. I knew she might let me. Instead, panic dressed itself as humor. "I should warn you," I said. "My last formal dance involved a middle school gym and a punch bowl incident." Leah's eyes stayed on mine for 1 extra second before she stepped back with a crooked smile. "Tragic," she said. "Was the punch bowl the aggressor?" History remains divided. We were still laughing when Arthur appeared at the edge of the stage. "Mr. Reed, a word." I released Leah's hand too quickly. Arthur adjusted his glasses. The board has voted to present you with the Preservation Craft Award at next month's gala. Black tie. Brief remarks. Nothing alarming. My stomach dropped as if the stage had opened under me. Leah squeezed my arm. Evan, that's wonderful. Yes, I said, because that was the correct word. That's very kind. Arthur nodded. You've kept half the city's historic instruments alive. It is overdue. He walked off, already consulting his clipboard. Leah turned to me, bright with pride. You have to let me come. I smiled. I even managed, I'd like that. But her expression changed as she looked at me, because my smile had not reached my eyes. Leah noticed the false smile, but she didn't pounce on it. That was one of the first things I learned about her. She could be direct without being careless. She let a person keep his skin on. For about a week. Then she took me tie shopping. You own a black suit, she said over the phone. You do not own a black tie gala face. I have many faces. You have one face, Evan. It says, please don't make me discuss cufflinks. Which was how I ended up in a menswear shop on a Saturday afternoon, standing under lights designed to expose every insecurity a man had ever tried to button down. Leah held up a bow tie. This one? Great. She narrowed her eyes and picked up another. This one? Also great. A third. This? Probably great. She lowered her hand. Are you agreeing with me because you like them or because you want to be easy? I am easy. No, she said. You are accommodating. There's a difference. I looked at the display of cufflinks as if they might defend me. Leah stepped closer, voice quiet enough that the salesman wouldn't hear. What do you like? It's just a tie. It is, and I'm asking anyway. The question felt absurdly intimate. I pointed to a simple black bow tie with a faint texture, not shiny, not theatrical. That one. It looks least like it wants applause. Her smile softened. There you are. I laughed, but it landed somewhere tender and uncomfortable. The night of the gala, the Marigold Theater glowed like a restored jewel. Cars lined the curb. Women in silk moved through the entrance on thin heels. Men in tuxedos laughed too loudly near a step and repeat banner, where a photographer flashed light into their faces. I stopped walking. Leah's hand rested lightly on my arm. She wore a deep blue dress and silver earrings, and she looked calm enough to negotiate peace between nations. You okay? She asked. Fine. The word came out polished and useless. At the door, Arthur Bell stood with his clipboard, somehow elegant and anxious at the same time. Mr. Reed, excellent. The award presentation has moved up by 12 minutes. A major donor has a flight. You'll be seated at table 3. Photographs first, then remarks. Very brief, warm but not rambling. Of course, I said. A photographer lifted his camera. Mr. Reed, over here. Flash, my collar tightened. Another flash. Someone said, This is the craftsman? Not cruelly, just with the harmless surprise of people who had never wondered who kept beauty working after the ribbon cutting. I heard forks against plates inside, laughter bouncing off marble, the low practiced hum of people who knew where to stand, how to hold a glass, when to smile. My hands went cold. Leah leaned in. Evan? I'm fine, I said again, then hated myself for it. I stepped aside near a column. You should go in. Arthur will worry if we're late. We are not responsible for Arthur's entire circulatory system. I don't want you to miss anything. I'm not here for anything. I'm here with you. That should have helped. Instead, it made the shame sharper. Because I had changed plans for her so easily that first night. I had noticed discomfort and acted like it was no big thing. But standing there in my rented tux with donors drifting past and perfume in the air, I could not admit that I wanted to run. I'll be right in, I said. Go ahead. Leah looked at me for a long second. Then she took my hand and led me away from the entrance, not inside, away. Around the corner, past the glowing marquee, down half a block to a hot dog stand with a red umbrella and a radio playing baseball commentary. The vendor looked at us in our formal clothes and did not react at all, which made him my favorite person in the city. Leah ordered 2 hot dogs and 2 sodas. I stared at her. You just walked out of a black tie gala for street meat. I prefer to think of it as a temporary revision. We're supposed to be inside, and we may go inside. She handed me a soda. Or we may not. I couldn't make myself drink. She sat on the low stone wall beside the stand, careful with her dress, and patted the space next to her. When I sat, she didn't ask, "What's wrong?" in that big, open-ended way that makes a person feel like he needs a thesis. She said, "Do you want rescue, company, or space?" I looked at her. She waited. "Company," I said, before I could choose the answer that caused the least inconvenience. And maybe a little rescue. Her face changed, but not with pity, with recognition. I took a breath that scraped on the way in. Rooms like that make me feel like someone is going to check a list and realize I'm not supposed to be there. You restore the instruments in those rooms? I know. You're receiving an award for that. I know. And still, I rub my palms on my trousers. I grew up tuning the donated upright at our church because my dad couldn't afford lessons, but the music director let me hang around. Most of my work clothes have glue somewhere on them. I can talk to a piano in a ballroom. I just can't talk to the ballroom. Leah looked toward the theater, then back at me. Why didn't you say that? Because I liked being the man who made things easier. Because wanting something made me feel expensive. Because if I was useful enough, no one had to decide whether I was worth the trouble. I only managed. I didn't want to ruin your evening. She laughed once, soft and sad. Evan, do you hear yourself? I did, unfortunately. I asked you to come, I said. I wanted you here. Then let me be here. The vendor called hot dogs, and Leah stood to get them. When she returned, she handed me one wrapped in paper and sat close enough that her shoulder touched mine. You changed the plan for me once, she said, without making me feel like a disaster. That was different. Was it? I looked at her then. Really looked. She was not embarrassed by me, not impatient, not disappointed that I had turned out less smooth than advertised. She was simply present. Will you stay with me? I asked. The words felt plain and enormous. Her answer came immediately. Yes. Something in me loosened. Leah set her hot dog aside, turned toward me on that stone wall, and placed one hand against my lapel. May I change this plan for you? She asked. I nodded. She kissed me. Not as a reward, not as a distraction. It was deliberate, warm, and unmistakably chosen right there under the red umbrella while the radio announcer described a double play. When she pulled back, her eyes searched mine. So, she said, do we leave? Go back together, or sit here until Arthur sends a search party? For once, I didn't ask what would be easiest for her. I looked at the lit theater, then at her hand still resting on my chest. Back together, I said. But slowly. Leah smiled. Slowly I can do. We did not go back immediately. First we ate hot dogs in formal clothes on a stone wall beside traffic because apparently intimacy sometimes arrives with mustard. Leah took one bite, then pointed at me with the hot dog. For the record, she said, Maisie was not the only person relieved to leave that restaurant. I frowned. What? Our first date. The place with the napkins doing bird impersonations. I thought you were embarrassed because your daughter was there. I was embarrassed because I had dragged my daughter into a room where even the bread seemed judgmental. She glanced down at her heels, now shining under the streetlight. But I was also miserable. I remembered her untouched sparkling water, the way she had rubbed the back of one heel, the folded flats in her tote. You kept looking at the door, I said, because I wanted to run through it. Her smile was crooked. I dressed like I'd been summoned to court. My shoes were trying to remove my skin. And I don't know if you noticed, but I never drank the water. I noticed. Of course you did. She shook her head, not unkindly. That's the dangerous part. Dangerous? You notice everything that might make someone else uncomfortable. Then you adjust before they have to ask. She paused. It's lovely, Evan. It really is. But tonight I realized I don't know what you do when you're the one hurting. I stared at the paper wrapper in my hands. Leah's voice stayed steady. I chose a second date because you didn't defend a bad plan. You didn't make me pay for the fact that the evening changed. You just said, this isn't working, and made room for something better. I was trying not to make you feel like a burden. You didn't. She touched my sleeve. But I need you to understand something. I don't want to fall in love with your usefulness. The word hit harder than it should have. She saw it and kept going anyway. I want your kindness, your attention, the way you listen like people are instruments with weather inside them. But I can't build anything real with a man who hides every need behind being easy. I don't know how to stop doing that quickly. I'm not asking quickly. She gave me a small smile. I'm asking honestly. Across the street, the theater doors opened and swallowed another glittering couple. Inside, Arthur was probably checking his watch so hard it required medical attention. Leah followed my gaze. 3 options, she said. We leave now, and I will not think less of you. We go back together, and you let me stand where I can see you. Or I wait at the pie counter, and you go in alone if that's what you truly want. There it was again. Not rescue, choice. My whole body wanted the first option. My pride wanted the third. But somewhere between the two was the truth. I want to go back, I said. With you. Leah's face softened. And, I added, my throat tight, before I speak, I may need to hold your hand. That is very inconvenient, she said. I blinked. Then she laced her fingers through mine. For my plan to remain mysterious and aloof. I laughed, and the laugh steadied me enough to stand. Arthur met us just inside the lobby, relief and schedule-related distress warring across his face. Mr. Reed, Miss Morgan, we are prepared to proceed in 4 minutes. Of course, I said. Leah squeezed my hand before releasing it. I'll be where you can see me. Backstage smelled like rope, dust, and fresh paint. I stood behind the curtain while Arthur gave an introduction full of words like stewardship, craftsmanship, and invaluable contribution. They sounded like they belonged to a man with a better haircut. My pulse thudded in my ears. Then I looked through a gap in the curtain. Leah stood near the front, not seated at the table where we were supposed to be, not pretending this was ordinary. She was just there, visible, one eyebrow slightly raised, as if daring me to disappear inside myself. I stepped out. The applause was polite, then warmer than I expected. The lights made it hard to see faces, which helped. Arthur handed me the award, a glass rectangle heavy enough to anchor a small boat. I had written remarks. They were in my pocket. Suddenly, I could not bear them. So I told the truth. Thank you, I said into the microphone. I spend most of my time with pianos after everyone else has left the room. That suits me. They don't care if I know which fork to use. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. My eyes found Leah. I used to think restoration meant making old things perfect again. It doesn't. It means listening closely enough to understand what can still hold, what needs support, and what should not be forced back into a shape that never fit. The room went quiet in a different way. The instruments in this theater were built by people whose names we mostly don't know. I'm grateful I get to help their work keep speaking. And I'm grateful to everyone who believes the hands that maintain beauty matter too. My voice nearly broke on that last line, but it didn't. Thank you for this honor. When I stepped back, the applause rose around me. Not thunderous, not movie-like, human. Backstage, Arthur blinked rapidly and adjusted his glasses. Efficient, he said, and unexpectedly affecting. Thank you, Arthur. Your timing was excellent. From him, that was practically a blessing. Outside afterward, Leah and I skipped the donor dessert reception. Not because I was fleeing this time, but because she asked if I wanted air, and I said yes. The night had cooled. The marquee lights buzzed softly above us. Leah touched the edge of the award. You were very good. I was terrified. I know. I didn't die. I also observed that. We stood there smiling like fools until she reached up and straightened the bow tie I had actually chosen. I want a relationship with you, she said. My heart stalled. But I am not going to infer it from favors, repaired hinges, perfect date logistics, or the fact that you remember how I take coffee. I do remember. Of course you do. Her eyes softened. Say what you want, Evan. The old instinct rose. Give her room, keep it light, don't ask for too much. Then I thought of her hand in mine backstage. I want you, I said. Not because your life needs fixing, not because I'm good in a crisis. I want you because I like who I am when I'm honest with you, even when it scares me. Leah stepped closer. That, she said, is a very strong beginning. Then she kissed me under the marigold marquee, and this time I did not pretend it was anything less than the start of something. 2 weeks after the gala, I called the restaurant from our first date and made another reservation. When I told Leah, there was a pause on the line. The courtroom with appetizers? She asked. The very one. Bold. I thought we could try it again, adult only, no carousel horses judging us. And if it's awful, then we leave. Another pause, softer this time. Good answer, she said. That Friday, I got there early again, but I didn't sit down and build a whole evening in my head before she arrived. I waited outside by the host stand because I had learned that looking composed was not the same thing as being ready. Leah walked in wearing a black dress, low heels, and the same expression she had worn before kissing me under the marigold marquee. Amused, alert, unwilling to let me hide in plain sight. No child, she said. No tote full of emergency footwear. No bishop napkins yet. No escape flats. She lifted one eyebrow. I'm a mother. There are always escape flats somewhere. The hostess led us to a table near the window. The room was still hushed, still formal, still convinced its butter deserved reverence. But this time I did not rush to rescue us from it. I waited until we sat down, then asked, What do you want? Leah looked at me over the menu. Tonight. Tonight. She smiled a little. I want to stay long enough to know whether the food is as serious as the lighting. I want to order something I can't pronounce. And I want us both to have permission to say, at any point, this plan is wrong, without apology. My chest warmed. I want that too. Dinner was actually good. Too tiny in places, too decorated in others, but good. Leah made quiet comments about the typography on the menu. I admitted the string quartet recording overhead was slightly flat, then promised not to stand on a chair and correct it. Halfway through dessert, my hands started to sweat. Leah noticed, of course. She set down her spoon. Evan, I'm not miserable. I didn't ask that. I know. I took a breath. I'm nervous. That I did suspect. This was where I used to make a joke. Something about custard. Something easy. Instead, I put both hands on the table. I want us to be exclusive, I said. Clearly, out loud. I don't want to drift into being important to you because I'm around and useful and remember things. Her face softened, but she stayed quiet, letting me finish. I want you as a woman first, not as a situation, not as a family opening I can prove myself worthy of. And if slowly, responsibly, there's a place for me in the life that includes Maisie, I'd like to earn that too. But I don't want to rush her, and I don't want to turn her into a reason for us to skip the part where we choose each other. Leah's eyes shone. That, she said, was a complete paragraph. I practiced. I can tell. Was it too much? No. She reached across the table and took my hand. It was exactly enough. Outside under the awning where valet tickets snapped in the wind, Leah kissed me like she had been waiting all through dinner. When she pulled back, she whispered, Yes, Evan, I choose you. 8 months later, we hosted dinner in the duplex we had found after learning that our separate apartments contained one decent couch between them and 6 lamps neither of us liked. We did not become a family by montage. There were calendars, boundaries, slow introductions, and plenty of nights when Leah and I went out alone because romance did not survive on leftover chicken nuggets and good intentions. Maisie remained 7, then 8, with no interest in becoming our tiny therapist. After her school recital, she sat at our kitchen table in striped socks, eating spaghetti and explaining that the cafeteria pudding had Structural problems. Taryn came by with cupcakes and immediately stole half our salad. Leah leaned against the counter beside me, shoulder touching mine. You okay? She asked quietly. I checked myself before answering. Tired, I said. Happy, a little overwhelmed by the glitter situation on the floor. Good honesty. Terrible glitter. Maisie looked up. Evan, if I get all A's, can we go to the arcade with the claw machine that cheats? It does cheat, I said. See, he understands evidence, she told Leah. Leah smiled at me over Maisie's head, and it felt less like being chosen once and more, like being chosen in small ways all the time. A year after that first disastrous reservation, Leah and I went back again for our anniversary dinner. This time, she wore a ring I had given her 3 weeks earlier by the river, near the carousel horse Maisie still claimed had the least haunted eyes. Leah had said yes before I finished asking, then made me finish anyway because clarity matters. At dinner, we made it through the appetizer before she rubbed one heel against the chair leg. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. You want to go? I asked. She grinned. Desperately. You? I was hoping you'd say that. So we paid, boxed up 2 elegant desserts, and left the formal room without drama, failure, or shame. At home, Maisie was waiting in pajamas on the couch, half asleep under a blanket, while Taryn watched a crime show at low volume and pretended she hadn't eaten our emergency popcorn. Leah kicked off her shoes at the door. I loosened my tie. Maisie sat up when she saw the dessert boxes. You escaped the fancy place, she said. We revised the evening, Leah told her. Maisie nodded solemnly. Smart. Did you bring cake? I looked at Leah, my fiancée, my partner, the woman who had taught me that being loved meant being known, not just being useful. Then I held up the boxes. 2 kinds. And there we were. Leah barefoot in the hallway, Maisie pajama-clad and reaching for a fork, me still in a suit but no longer trapped inside it. All of us gathered around dessert that was never meant to be eaten at home and somehow tasted better because it was. So tell me, what would you have done if your blind date arrived at a formal restaurant with her young daughter? Have you ever had someone notice you were uncomfortable and change the plan without making you feel ashamed? I'd really like to hear your stories in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, please like and subscribe.